So welcome to this lively discussion on the Pulse of the Library survey and report that was conducted by Clarivate. And this is going to be a lot of what we're talking about. Introductions first, of course. I'm Marshall Breeding. I've been asked to moderate this session. I do various things. I'm the creator and editor of library technology guides. I do consulting and speaking at conferences and different things. Hopefully you've seen some of my reports. Oren Ben-Aray, he's the Senior Vice President for Strategy and Innovation at Clarivate. I've known Oren for a very long time. He's held similar positions at ProQuest and before that Ex Libris. So certainly been in the industry a long time. And Niamh McGuigan is the director for the Center for Library Exploration and Research at Brown University. And she's on the AI advisory panel, and that's a connection with this report as well. How many of you saw the poll that we did to ask for questions and input about these preliminary questions? I'll just kind of, nobody raised their hand. Okay, so in the discussion, I hope this comes out. You know, what are you most optimistic about when it comes to AI implementation or scaling of AI technologies in your library? And what are the preliminary concerns and challenges your libraries face in adopting and scaling AI technologies? So be thinking about those. And so the first thing I want to do is turn it over to Oren, who will give us the highlights of the report and bring out some interesting issues in it. Oren, would it be easy if you stood up here to talk?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And drive the slides as you go?
So thanks very much, Marshall. And can you hear me? Oops. I need to bend. Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, sounds like it. So thanks very much, Marshall. Really good to be here and talk about this. I think it's kind of a good time and, you know, interesting topic. I'm yet to see a session at Charleston that doesn't have AI in it. So here we are talking about AI as well. But I really wanted to kind of give context for this discussion a little bit. You know, we at Clarivate, you know, mentioned ProQuest and Ex Libris, been doing AI. I suspect that some of you, or perhaps many of you, did AI, worked with AI for a long time now. But November 2022 was an important inflection point in AI, and in a couple of, I think, important ways. One is, of course, the public release of ChatGPT, you know, made everybody in the world aware of the generative AI technology, which was pretty new at the time, and some of the tremendous opportunities, indeed some risks as well. I think the other component that is important to kind of think about is that it really started commercialization of that enormous technology and made it, you know, much more available, even at people, you know, personal level, students, faculty, librarians, and other people as well. So while not totally new, obviously generative AI did present kind of a real juncture, new juncture to all of us in the industry. We started working on AI and generative AI as well. We created what we call an academic AI platform. You know, we formed development partnerships with a number of institutions to get views on AI and needs. Marshall mentioned the council, the AI Council that we formed, and Niamh is part of that council. But we really wanted to broaden that look and kind of think about and, you know, get into more institutions globally. And really test, you know, try to identify what are the trends and what is the impact of that, you know, transformation of AI in their respective institutions. So that's what we did, and that's what we conducted in this survey. So there's a couple of things here. We started the survey in April of this year, 2024. We reached more than 1,500 respondents. We added also a number of interviews, qualitative interviews, really to add depth and color to some of the results that we saw. And we did this primarily in academic institutions, but three-quarters were academic institutions, but also had respondents from national libraries as well as public libraries. The report is published. You'll be able to view it. See. The report examines the results and spotlighting some findings there, both opportunities and concerns. So if we just take a kind of brief look at this, just a few points kind of to emphasize that I would like to emphasize today. For most, it's really not a question of whether they'll be implementing AI in their institution, in their library, but more about what and how, particularly with an emphasis of how to implement it responsibly. So we've seen, a majority of the respondents saying that they're in one stage of either evaluation or planning. About 60% have responded that they do that. Now, take a note that the survey went out in April. That's 6 human months ago. In AI time, it's ages. Things change, obviously, and we're going to repeat that survey and see kind of the trends as they evolve. But certainly the majority is evaluating and or planning. But it is still an early stage, certainly at the point of the survey. It's certainly a top priority, particularly on kind of the IT project list. This is the highest priority in many institutions, close to 50% of the institutions. Now, I would emphasize that, and it became clear in the survey, and perhaps even more so in conversations, it's more nuanced than just to say there's ChatGPT and what do we do. There are more nuanced use cases. It's not just about, the discovery part, the chat-based discovery. Lots more use cases, and these use cases and goals apply across the university and the library missions. That's what emerged in the survey as well. You see more than 50% pointed out that they believe AI can advance and enhance the areas of student learning, teaching and learning, but there are other objectives across research and library operations as well. I think it's interesting to note a couple of other quick points I'll make is that almost 50%, 42% of the respondents do believe that while AI will automate some of the tasks, some refer to it as routine tasks, I would argue that AI will likely automate also complex tasks. This is viewed both with excitement and a little bit of, I won't say fear, but concern. We'll talk about it in a moment. The excited is really around the fact that this may and should free up librarians' time to do other things. So that's an important, I think, point I hope we'll be able to discuss as well. But there's clearly also a skill gap that many reported. Over 50% believe that they need to upskill, create upskill opportunities either for their role or for other library roles. So there's definitely a need there. Perhaps we'll talk about that as well. And we also learned that many still think that they don't have yet the right educational and the right tools to get that upskill opportunity. I'll close this, kind of set of stats by saying that no big surprise where we're in a discussion where budget is not an issue. Certainly it is here as well. I think this raises also the point of the need for advocacy and the ability to actually get resources invested in AI-based initiatives. Just two quick, diving into two quick questions. Again, I think it is important to note that there are many use cases that respondents pointed out to in terms of interest to apply AI and seeing the opportunity of AI. There's definitely, sorry, I skipped a slide here. I would like to point out accessibility showed up actually very high at the top of the list, and the opportunities for AI to help us create more accessible resources, do it at a better scale, and I would add at a better pace as well. There's definitely interest in kind of more of the traditional Gen AI application to research discovery, resource discovery, but a range of other use cases as well. I just point out, digital preservation is an interesting one. Personalized learning, we certainly in Clarivate pay close attention to that. We think there is a great opportunity there as well. So it's really much broader than research data is another one up high. So definitely a range of use cases where AI seems to be offer some great opportunities for libraries and institutions. And back to the question about kind of the what's the role of AI, and how do we think about that in terms of jobs and job security. Again, just to point out, many see this as an opportunity to refocus on perhaps more important and new areas for librarians. Would love to hear views on that as well. Yes, it will require reskilling many people feel that they're not equipped yet to do jobs that are AI driven or with AI component in them. And there is certainly a concern about job displacement as well, although I would say it was somewhat lower than perhaps what was reported earlier. So there's a lot there. I do invite you to go online. There's this report is available online, and it has all the information, including the raw data, but also some tools for you to work with if you want to cut it by geography or by institution types. All this is available there. And with that, I think I'll hand it over to you, Niamh. Yes.
Yeah. Is this on? Okay, great. You can hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Niamh McGuigan. As Marshall introduced me, I'm the Director for Library Exploration and Research at Brown University, and I work on library-wide initiatives for research, teaching, and learning at Brown, and supporting campus and community engagement. So one of those initiatives at Brown has been the Critical AI Learning Community, and this is a group for students, faculty, and staff at Brown to learn about and critique AI technology. This is a very large and lively group of people from all across the university, and we've been meeting in the library every week for the last year and a half to discuss AI, to develop skills, and consider what AI literacy should look like at our institution. So a lot of my perspective on AI in libraries and academia is informed by that group. And one of the main reasons that this group has been such a success, and for me, I've never had a library program with so many people show up, so it's really exciting. And I think that success is driven by the fact that people are really interested in learning more about what other people are thinking and doing in relation to AI. In all the surveys and assessments we do, people say their number one motivation is they want to know, what is everyone doing in the university? What are they thinking? How do I keep up? what should I be knowing? And then they're also really hungry to share their own ideas and perspectives about what we should be doing and where we should be going. So there's that kind of dual curiosity and hunger to share. So by providing this forum for our users to explore that curiosity, the library has become one of the central hubs on our campus for AI learning and literacy, which has been really great for us. And I think that we're seeing that same intense curiosity with librarians. I think it's evidenced by all the AI sessions at this conference, that there's like a hunger to just know like what is happening out there, and also how can I share what I'm seeing and what my perspective is. So big surveys like this Pulse of the Library survey, these are really helpful for answering some of these questions about like what does the landscape look like? How do we start to develop a sense of what's happening in our community in a practical sense, but also understanding what are the concerns and the questions that librarians have, so we can dive into that and figure out how to work on those problems together. One of the things that struck me from the survey results, and I've got a couple things represented up on this slide, is that we're seeing some clear trends emerge about AI, but there's also a lot of uncertainty. One of the things that stood out to me is that when we look at where libraries stand in terms of implementing AI tools, this, really a range. We have a lot of people who are at like a very, very early planning stage, like 25%, 35% are like, we're gonna plan, we're not quite there yet, and then some people just don't have plans at all yet, and I think that's to be expected. We're really at the very, very beginning of whatever this change is gonna be, so I think this insight is really helpful for understanding that. I was also really struck by the results that showed that among academic librarians, right around 50% are optimistic about AI, and only 13% are pessimistic. That really surprised me. I think a year ago it would have been really different numbers. But there's still over a third in that middle spot, right? And perhaps some of them are just not really sure what to think. And I think that's to be expected with a new development like this, that we're going to see some enthusiastic early adopters, and then a lot of us are going to decide to, wait and see where it goes. Let's just kind of see how these other schools do it, and then maybe we can learn from them. But I do think it's also useful to keep in mind that AI technology is polarizing, and following the leader may not be the best strategy for every library. So understanding sort of like, where is it a good strategy to sort of like wait and see where the crowd goes, and where is it important to understand our local needs. I think one example that I often kind of keep in mind is that there's several different surveys in different contexts that are showing that women are far more skeptical about AI and are less likely to use it. And if we think about the fact that around 80% of librarians are women, that's kind of an interesting intersection. So just noting that there are a lot of different trends that are going to impact each other as we go through this experience is really helpful. And I just think in general what I'm seeing in my own personal experience is that people are excited about AI, they want to use it, but they don't want to do that until they trust it, right? That trust is so, so important. And I think that part of what leads to that, like not knowing what to trust, is this like whiplash we feel right now. We read about AI tools that are as smart as the PhD student, whatever that means, or like we have these podcasts that are generated out of nowhere, and that feels kind of remarkable. But then we also have like really outdated technology, and we can't really figure out like how can AI just like make this thing work better. That, there's this sense of like the future, but also the past is still very, very present. And to me, what this always makes me think about is the quote that's attributed to the science fiction writer William Gibson. I don't know if he actually said it, but that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And I think that's a really useful thing to keep in mind, partly because often that line is interpreted to mean the future is coming, it's inevitable, just wait, right? And I think that that is an attitude I hear a lot about AI, like, what are you gonna do? Just get with the program. But I do think that like we need to be engaging now. I think that's really important because it's impacting our users, but that we shouldn't regard it as an inevitability, because I think that right now is a really important moment to be shaping how AI technology is distributed in our communities so that it best supports our users and best supports the values of our institutions and of our profession. And I think that work is going to be very, very closely tied to a lot of collaboration. So with our campus partners, with our students and researchers, and with the publishers and the technology companies that are developing the tools and the systems that we'll use. We know that collaboration is important. That's why this conference exists. But I think it's becoming really essential around this moment. Like, we don't know what the impact is going to be, but I think it's safe to say it's going to change a lot of our work, and probably really fast, like maybe faster than we're expecting. So taking this time now to like share and learn while there's still like some wiggle room and some like time to explore and think about potential futures, I think is really important. So I'm excited we're gonna do some of that learning together.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay, good. Well, so, thanks both Laura and Niamh for, those very kind of helpful remarks about this survey. But so now it's kind of your turn. This is a lively discussion. I expect some liveliness. We're interested to hear your reactions to the survey and the report specifically, but to AI in general. What are some of the concerns and optimism that you bring to this? I'll start off by kind of asking a question that we thought might be one that would evoke some responses. And so I want to hear your opinions, but then feel free to ask the panelists, questions that you have about the report and the technology and the pulse of the library, where the libraries are going. So this pulse of the library says that over 60% of respondents are evaluating or planning for AI integration. Does this ring true to all of you? How are your libraries planning for AI integration? And then what does that mean? What does AI integration mean in your context? So what do you think?
Just raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you both for the introduction to the survey results. I'm Celine. I'm a librarian at UC Santa Barbara. Can you hear me okay? So I was taken from about the comment about trust, and I think that transparency is really great. And I work in a collection side, so whether we know it or not, or notice it, you see the little diamond icon that represents there's something AI going on. So it's a little bit of a hint, but it's maybe not enough. And I think that when you talk about what are our plans, I don't think we know. So we are maybe surprised sometimes because there isn't enough time to communicate about where it's being soaked. It's being soaked in, sort of. It's kind of showing up whether it's clearly talked about in an initiative or a group on campus like you're doing at Brown or not. So it's there, whether we are planning for it or not, right? Either because it's pilot and just shows up, or we're trying to do it on our own. So I don't have any more comments about our plans, except we're trying to, as you said, stay on top of it. And we know it's here. It's a technology tool that is, and technology is embedded in our lives.
Thank you. This is coming at us really fast. Only a year or so ago did generative AI kind of come on the scene. So it's happening around us, regardless of what we're doing as libraries and as library providers. Oren or Niamh, do you want to chime in here?
I can just say that I agree, and that's a topic that has come up as part of the Clarivate Academic Advisory AI Council. I got all the A's in the wrong order. That this need that librarians are very busy. We don't have enough time for training. We don't have enough money, which impacts everything. And so, there are ways that Clarivate and other vendors can do a lot to make this easier for us, right? By providing documentation and training. And so we're talking about those strategies. That feedback has been really consistent from the librarians and part of the council that we need to prepare. And it's not just a matter of saying a new tool is getting rolled out, but also could you supply some documentation, maybe a LibGuide, something like that to help us get over that hump of introducing it to our campus and introducing it to ourselves as well.
Just to add, I think I definitely agree, and I think that I would suggest to not think about it as a serial process, but rather, kind of with multiple dimensions. You can work on exploring integration of AI tools, and in parallel to that, I think just realizing that most probably all your users are using AI tools somewhere, whether they do it using library applications or not, they probably do. So, think about the education, kind of the digital literacy in an AI age, and what does it mean, how we can, help make better decisions at that level. I think will be important to do in parallel. And the third one is indeed the education and the upskilling. What do we need to do? One point I will make, for example, in terms of education, one of the things that we find that there is a little bit of a gap in understanding is quite technical, but I think is important for this discussion. One of the main concerns that we're hearing about application of AI is the notion of quality and integrity. You can't trust the AI partly because you can't trust the answers that you get. There's well-documented hallucinations, made-up facts, and a lot of variations of the above. One of the things that I think is important is to recognize that there's other ways. ChatGPT is not the only way to approach a generative AI. We're, for example, developing our academic AI platform, which really introduces a different architecture. We can get into that if there's an interest, Marshall. But basically, this means that you use the AI, for the language capabilities, but you ground the answers in scientific content that you can trust. It's a trusted content. So back to this notion of trusted application of AI, I think we need to not put under big umbrella AI and kind of either make it a binary conversation. I think it's a lot more nuanced, and the more we know and are educated about this, I think the more prepared we are to have this discussion also internally in the institutions and with users.
A lot of good points. There's a question in the back, so please go ahead.
Hello. Ooh. So I was just going to kind of piggyback off what she was saying is at our campus, we generally have our librarian attend the sort of like general writing classes, and they've been uninvited now because the writing teachers themselves have realized that AI is being used by the students, and it's evolving on such a continuous basis. There's no agenda, there's no curriculum for the classes. They're basically making it up each week, each time they have another class. So so our librarians are now not being invited to show how to use research tools and writing tools. And so so we're also just kind of pivoting as things come along. And so is the whole campus, to be honest. So.
I forgot to say your name and institution for us, please.
I'm Catherine Geard. I work at Caltech Library.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? Be thinking of your question, because my observation is that in some ways we're coming from behind. The pot's all kind of been poisoned a bit by all of the bad AI experiences that a lot of us have had, and libraries have a different standard that it has to be reasonable true responses, whatever the word true means, and not hallucinations and bias and all of that. So I think that we have a lot of responsibility as we present AI to library users to do it in ethical and responsible ways beyond what a lot of folks have experienced so far.
Sorry, I can't resist but respond. That's a really remarkable situation that you're encountering. It sounds so frustrating. And so I'm not going to offer you advice because I don't know about your institution, and that would be silly. But what I will say that something that has been exciting in my own experience is that a lot of the people in the university who don't get the most attention, so in my case it's a lot of like staff across the university, writing instructors are often in that case, are often the ones who are not included in conversations around AI. They're not seen as needing training for AI. They're not seen as key stakeholders, but that's where they're feeling like the discomfort and the squeeze kind of the most. And this was a surprise for me, but one thing I learned through the program we've done at our library is that our most enthusiastic and vital audience has been like staff in the university, because they need this training. They're talking to their faculty, they're figuring out how to make things work, and so that has been like a really productive angle, is becoming a resource for other staff or for other groups in the university who aren't seen as central to this, and that has just opened up a lot more opportunities for collaboration, and so that it's like very frustrating that like those groups are often not considered at the top of the list when we think about the impact of AI at our campus, but it also means that there's some great potential there for like solidarity and group learning as well.
Who else? Another comment? You're being so quiet. Oh, I didn't see, but please.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can't say your name and institution.
I'm Alex, and I'm from Emory University. One thing I'm curious about from your experience with like the survey, or just your experience with AI, is like obviously certain types of AI tools and products have been around for a very long time. And I feel like now a lot of things that we wouldn't have called AI, we're now just calling AI to like hop on the bandwagon, which are obviously very different than like the large language models. So I'm kind of curious about how you kind of separate out discussions around these AI tools that have been around for a very long time versus these large language models, which I think are the things that are frightening people so much in these conversations, if that makes sense.
And just to follow on what you said, I mean, AI has been around a long time. Machine learning, I mean, when you're typing ahead and it helps you do that, that's kind of a form of AI. But generative AI is like a huge increment different than that. And I think that's why these conversations are happening, because it has fundamentally different capabilities than previous ones.
I agree, and I think that the application of generative AI, I think, really hits in the core of a lot of what we're doing, in terms of reading, writing. There's tools now that can write in your behalf, and I think that the whole notion of academic and research integrity is really is being brought to the spotlight, because there's a lot of tools that get involved in that process. I think it really raises also a very interesting conversation about, what are we trying to do, so avoiding, the use of writing aided, by AI is probably, and this is just my guess, we're not going to be successful in doing that. I think what we probably would want to put a bit of a focus is how we can make the process of writing better, assuming that there will be Gen AI tools. And that's kind of a place where I think we in the library profession has a lot to contribute into. So yeah, I think the definition of AI, Gen AI, is kind of almost irrelevant now. It's more about the capabilities that are really considerably stronger now with the introduction of Gen AI.
Am I missing a hand? So, okay, great.
It's John Kraska with Every Library. I'm not an institutional librarian. I don't work in academic libraries, but I looked at the survey, and there's a couple barriers that I'd like the panel to talk about. Barriers to successful adoption. I can't tell from the survey results if it's comfort, skills, and acumen, or it's just going to be about money, if it's budgets.
Any comments on that? How many of you have tons of money to put on AI projects? But good observation, good question. This conference is about, a lot of folks in technical service are part of the library that do a lot of work for the library. One of the questions that we thought about in advance is that the survey says 42% believe AI can automate routine tasks. What process are you considering for automation? So, where does generative AI hit serials and acquisitions and cataloging, for example? Any comments or thoughts about that? How many of you would love to have some help writing your monthly reports?
Hi, I'm Beth Thompson, Western Carolina University. I know in other fields that AI can be used, such as with quotations, to be able to go over a large, maybe quotes, and then paste them right into a document, into a spreadsheet. And so it would be neat to see something like that with, some of our purchasing, to be able to do something similar to make some of that tasks easier.
Good idea. Others? In the back? Toward the back.
I'm Denise Hannibal from Washington University, And I've been working on licenses recently and just had the thought, didn't do anything about it, but does the non-disclosure statement mean that I couldn't even put the license into the internal Washington University only ChatGPT to kind of look for things more easily? It was like one of those thoughts that I had. It was interesting. Also, how do you make the library relevant in this? At our university, we're seen as having not much to do with AI, or all their discussions of AI. How do you convince the institution that you have something to bring to the table?
Yeah. Well, so just to say something about the first part of your statement, you have a license that you want to get summarized or parsed by an AI, but you don't want it to enter into the large language model itself. So that is kind of a solvable problem because it can process a document without remembering it. In fact, that's one of the frustrating things about using these AI tools is they don't remember from one session to the next. But did you want to respond to either of you to the second half of her?
Well, just to follow on that point, this is kind of, I alluded to this. I think there's we need to be clear in explaining what happens when a language model is used or Gen AI is used. And we hear a lot, this is not through the survey, but through qualitative conversations and working with partners and institutions, that concern about training the model, through that process. So if I'm using an application, in our case, we have a range of applications, Gen AI, empowered application like Research Assistant. Do you train the model? And that's where I would say, there's a difference between the general purpose AI and the institutional AI and the academic AI that we're building, where we build it in a way that is secure and private. So none of that is happening. So I think this is a point that needs to be clarified, and we need to do better. We and perhaps in general, in kind of identifying those different use cases and the risks that should be associated with those use cases. Because right now, I think there's too much of a broad brush of there is a risk around this.
Yeah, and I can respond to some of that as well. I think your comment about is this a violation of the NDA is such a great question. I feel like that comes up all the time. Like libraries are we're thinking about privacy and security all the time. And so, and maybe there are times where I go, I might be even taking this too seriously, but there's so many things that I'm excited to do. Like I want to take all of our instruction and reference stats and pop them into ChatGPT and get some help. But then I think, that seems a little bit even though I know there's a setting to say don't remember this or don't use this for training, it still makes me feel a little uncomfortable when it's data that represents patrons, right? So I just don't feel comfortable going there. I might feel differently if it was a locally hosted, but we don't have that in our campus. But I think those exact kind of questions, I think, are really important for librarians to understand as we think about how we're going to do that kind of automation. And on your bigger point, I hear that from colleagues all the time, that people have just kind of ignored the library in this. We've been really fortunate in our campus. I think a lot of it was just kind of luck, where there was a little bit of a vacuum, and we just got excited and said, let's just start doing stuff, and that's been really helpful, and it has led to a lot of integration on campus in terms of being part of councils on search committees for new AI-related positions and things like that. And I'll kind of repeat what I said earlier, which is that first of all, there are audiences that are being ignored, and finding those audiences, I think, is a great strategy. The other thing that has really just been remarkable to me is there are, I think, some opportunities for really doubling down on core information literacy. Suddenly, we've got faculty who are saying, I don't even know how to explain to my students why using ChatGPT for search is different from a library database. I don't really know what a library database does. Can we talk about that so that I can understand why it's different? And so I think that there are ways to lean into what we're doing. I don't think this moment is going to last forever, but I think right now is kind of a ripe opportunity to say, do you even know about why data privacy is important? We can talk about that. So it's hard work and it won't work everywhere, but I think there are some kind of unique opportunities to lean into.
I'm listening. So I get a chance to talk to a lot of different libraries, maybe not as much as Oren as he visits the world in libraries. But I hear a variety of experiences. One is that our library administration has said that AI is important and we're going to find ways to use it. The other side is that, you know, this seems like something that we need to wait and see for a while until it gets more proven. What are your experiences in that big spectrum? Are you being asked, is that maybe one of the reasons you're here, is to learn about AI, whatever context that is, and bring it back? Or is your institution more the one that wants to wait until it matures? Did I see a hand? Yeah.
So at Caltech, obviously, we do kind of focus on AI. So we know it's there, and we know probably, you know, at least 1/4 of the campus is already, you know, probably actually working on inventing AI tools all the time. But based off your survey, I was actually surprised to see how I thought there would be a larger number of librarians being opposed to AI. And we have at least one staff member, a couple staff members who are staunchly opposed to it. And so it has been kind of a matter of saying, look, it's here, it's on campus. We've got to, you know, catch up to it. But we have started to adopt some tools that do use, you know, language learning tools or, and, you know, just AI to help our researchers. And so we're like, there's this thing called Kenius that we just recently adopted. But it was a challenge we had to go through with our Office of General Counsel to make sure that, you know, we could use this tool, that it does have a product called Open Alex that also was here at the conference. And, you know, so we had some of our librarians who were just like, I can't believe we're doing this. This is such an affront on people's privacy, and others that were like, great, it's about time. And yeah, so getting the general counsel involved and making sure that we were very specific with, you know, what sort of like intellectual property could be shared within the tool. And, you know, I think Kenius was so happy to have us on board. They were like, yeah, whatever you say. Yeah, so so that's basically like the philosophy that we have in our library. So it's a little challenging for some to accept that it's happening, whereas the rest of us are like, it's happening, so let's just you know, make sure we have the right tools to support our researchers. So, thank you.
Who wants to give another perspective? She's coming with a mic.
I'm coming.
Have you gotten your 10,000 steps?
All 10,000 in one room. I'm Carol Ann Borkert from the University of South Florida. We had also encountered that attitude of, like, why are you guys doing AI? And interestingly, the librarians were in the front end of some of the people at the university discussing it. So it was like, really, were you not aware that we were talking to you at the beginning? Anyway, we're definitely on the side of being pushed to develop how to use AI tools, develop our own AI tools, find ways to apply them. In fact, our dean at our in-service day in May or so announced to the staff that he wanted people to set up some cross-departmental teams, and he would do it as a competitive internal grant process so they could do some applications. And those of us in administration, he was like, seriously, I'm going to fund all of them that are good, as many of them as I can. And we had 2 good proposals come forward and funded them. So we've got 2 groups that are cross-departmental, involving people from several areas that are working on a couple of AI projects to see how to develop that and apply that in the library.
Looking for hands? While you're waiting to raise your hand, you know, another observation is that most of the results did not come from public libraries. They're academic and research libraries. And my personal experience when I talk to public libraries about AI, they're a lot more skeptical. Just by the nature of what they do, they're not involved in the kind of discovery and research processes that are similar to academic libraries. No. Okay. On any topic, do you have any questions for us, the panelists? We have not exhausted the topic. I think we've got about 10 more minutes. Oh, thank you.
Sure. My name is Kate Pitcher. I'm from the U.S. Government Publishing Office, so I don't actually work in a library any longer, but I work with the Federal Depository Library Program. One of the questions I have for the panelists are what are your thoughts surrounding the uses of AI to create metadata for cataloging and for catalog records?
I can go. Yeah. I'll be brief because I'm not a cataloger, so I don't want to take knowledge I don't have. I do think that when I think about just generally sort of like as someone who's more of a research and learning librarian, that I've paid a lot of attention to like the quality of metadata over the years, and certainly noticed, like, oh boy, like this metadata is great, this metadata is not so great, and it really matters a lot, right? And so I'm interested in like these choices that are being made by my cataloger and metadata colleagues because I know how much it's going to impact my work. So at our own institution, we're starting to experiment with generating metadata for digitized collections, partly in that sense of like we weren't going to have any metadata anyway, so like let's just give it a shot. And I think that seems like a great place to be experimenting. But I have so many concerns about it, and it does seem like something that requires a lot of special attention. At the same time, I also know that like it's not there's so many needs for metadata. Maybe like okay metadata is better than no metadata. So I think that's a really, really important thing to discuss. But I think in particular, we can look to like other examples of like we've had all kinds of like ways that we've been automating metadata for a long time. What are the lessons we can learn from that? Like we've seen evidence of certain communities are being obscured by that creation. So what can we learn from that to bring it back to the process and do that testing? I think that this is one of those things where partnership between librarians and publishers and vendors is so important, so we can say this really isn't working, or here's a use case, we need to test this out. I think doing this together is just so important.
I'm not a cataloger either. I'll pass it over to Ori in just a sec, but I'm married to one. And so great interest in this particular question. So multiple times and with various large language models, ChatGPT and different versions of that, I've tried to coach it into making MARC records that describe a book. And it understands MARC syntax really well. And it looks great. Oh yeah, this is better than a vendor record. And then you look at it and so much of it is just made up. So I think it takes more help than just asking it to create a record. I think you have to have frameworks and structures to ensure that what you're asking a generative AI process to do is actually going to know what it can do and what it can't do. So that's been my observation so far. And there's a lot more to say, but I am optimistic in general about generative AI being able to describe resources.
Yeah, if I may, I'm not a cataloger, admittedly, either. But just maybe a step aside, I think it raises also another interesting question. What's the future of metadata in the world of AI? Maybe we can have another whole session, and I'm sure there will be more heated than this discussion, or perhaps I suppose so. But I think the point, for me, the short answer is yes. Actually, I would argue that metadata is becoming, in some cases, even more important. The reason for that is the way that we apply Gen AI in context. I mentioned grounding AI in scholarly content, trusted content, RAG application, those type of things. A lot of that is based on metadata. So I just want to cover also that point of whether there is a need for metadata. I believe there is, we believe there is, and it's going to grow, in fact. I also believe that, some of those problems that we're seeing, I would say, related to two issues. One, we're very early on. Let's just remember, we're kind of in the iPod stage of iPhone, for AI. So it will get better and better, possibly exponentially. But also, there's a difference between using ChatGPT and using, a model or an agent, rather, or a platform in our case, that is really designed, optimized to do the work on that type of content. So I would argue that the quality is getting really, really good. It's not perfect, probably never be perfect. So I would like to suggest that AI can be a terrific tool that will help us bring more value to cataloging, do it faster, make it maybe, relevant to more objects. We shouldn't just think about text. I'm thinking about creating metadata from images, from videos, from other artifacts. And I think it will be a great help. And by the way, we also do, and offer that, and we have a program and, to help catalogers use AI. It's always assumed, certainly at this point, that there's a human in the middle. And it's not fully automated. It's just really an aid that hopefully will get better efficiencies, at better scale, faster. So,
go ahead.
I just have one comment to make. You mentioned we are the iPod stage of iPhone. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Anu Murthy, Stanford University Medical Library. I wanted to, how you were saying iPod version of iPhone, for the iPod version of AI, if the corporations are doing tapping on nuclear energy for powering up all these Gen AI tools, how is it going to be for the iPhone version of it? That's what I was wondering. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on it, because it does use a lot of energy. And is that ethical for us to be consuming that much of energy when people don't have drinking water in so many places? So there's that dilemma, right? So I just wanted to comment on that, and I wanted to see what your thoughts are on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Such a good comment, and it comes up a lot, doesn't it, when we think about the computational cycles it takes, especially to build a large language model. That's where most of that computation takes place, when you do kind of neural learning and to be able to make the connections that then allow a language model to do what it does. So that's one thing. That's money spent. That's energy spent already. But then how much is spent for each time we query something that's based on a large language model? Data and computing resources, certainly do take energy, and the more they can be renewable resources, the better. And the question I bring up in other discussions is, well, just think of all the energy consumption through Bitcoin mining. My guess is it might be as much or more, but this is something that we're more aware of.
I think
Lauren,
we're
yeah.
at time.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that was our last question. So thank you. Any other things that we need to say as we close the session?
Nope, just thank you for coming.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks to the panelists. Thank you for all of you and for your questions. And enjoy the rest of your day in the conference, of course.